All right, we're back in the wonderful world of me losing my mind with absolutely no ambition to make these videos right now. I have tons of vehicles that I'm constantly fixing, and given that my garage doesn't have heat, I can only fix those vehicles during the summer. So my plan right now is I want to have enough videos recorded throughout the fall and the winter that I can play them through the entire year, so that way during the summer I can work on all of the car videos for the other channel. I started recording this video yesterday, but then some other stuff came up, so I couldn't make that happen, and I don't know. Basically what's going on is I have a new case. I have to do some thermal tests because I want to compare the NZXT H510 Elite to the Fractal Design Torrent, because this case here is known for being incredibly restrictive. But in real world practice, I've been using this for about a year. And this is a 9900K with a 1080 Ti. There's 3 NVMEs in there. There's 32 gigs of RAM, a 1200 watt power supply. Like, everything in here are extremely hot components. And I've never really had an issue with thermals. The only thing is I have to run a 280mm rad. Because if I have like a giant video to render or something like that, that i9 in there will easily hit over 90 degrees. So anything less than a 280, it's not gonna happen. And I have 2 140s on the front that come with the case and 2 140s on the back, push-pull, which is also on the intake of the case because the vents are on the back and then there's also some across the bottom. So that is the most optimal situation for that i9, and even on its hardest workload, it'll always sustain, it'll never thermal throttle, and I've never had issues with it. I also change my thermal compound every single year when I do my yearly upgrades and everything. However, right now, because I switched the 1080 Ti back to air cooling, I actually changed the thermal compound about 6 months ago. That's always been my rule of thumb. Every year, clean everything out, clean all the dust, wipe the fans down, change thermal compound, make sure everything's good, do a clean install, and then every single year I essentially have a brand new computer by just maintaining my stuff, and I never have critical issues with anything failing. We'll actually come back to that in a minute. Right now, this case, 6-month-old thermal compound, everything is good. I've just done a clean install and I just kind of made it a little bit minimalist. I've covered it before in other videos that I do. I don't alter Windows at all other than just removing some of the stuff for like a minimalist look. Every program that's on here is going to be the same. I'm not going to be installing anything else. I'm not even going to be uploading any of the footage for any of these videos just to make sure that the NVMEs even have the exact same capacity usage throughout all of these tests. Now, the only difference is I am going to be screen recording, but I'm going to be screen recording to my cloud, which is set up as a shared network drive. So even the footage from OBS is going to be going over the network to the cloud just to make sure that every single test is exactly the same. What are you doing? What? Why did that screen just turn on? Oh, okay. There's something seriously wrong with this laptop, which is what I was going to get into about never having any sort of hardware failure. This laptop, the warranty expires on November 30th, so I have about 19 days of warranty left on this thing. And for some reason, it just up and decided that the thermals are going to be ridiculously high, and the Wi-Fi I can hit anywhere between 30 to 60 megabit per second. But that's going to be a whole other thing because this was purchased through Best Buy, and then when I spoke to Asus support about RMA, because it is under warranty, they said that the serial number is like Best Buy exclusive or something, and that essentially means that I'm not allowed to talk to Asus directly. I have to talk to Geek Squad and get them to do it for me. Obviously, I didn't pay for the extended warranty because this is what I do, but it's not even a year old and it's already broken. Something is wrong with it. It's running extremely hot. The screen keeps turning on for some reason while it's in sleep mode. I don't know what's going on there. That's new. That just started happening. Can't wait to try and figure out whatever that is. As you can see, I'm very salty with this laptop right now. I paid $4,700 Canadian for this thing. Didn't even last 1 year and it's already broken. So I don't know, that's a whole other thing. I want to benchmark this case with this install exactly the way it is. It's not about the performance because I'm also going to be screen recording during this entire process, and that's going to be taking tons of resources away from the scores. What I want are the scores, thermals in this case versus the Fractal Torrent. Now, I pre-ordered Forza Horizon 5, and I've been having tons of issues with it. I cannot get it to work on Windows 10, no matter what I do. Right now, I have a clean install because when the pre-order first came out, at midnight, I was trying to get it working for probably 2 hours and finally gave up. I installed Windows 11 just to try. Works perfect, right out of the box. No issues with Windows 11. Windows 10, it's almost like it's forcing you to use Windows 11, and that sucks because I don't want to use Windows 11. There's too many issues right now, and they've removed too much function for me to use that in my day-to-day. So if I try and start Forza Horizon 5, I get this screen right here, signing in, syncing data, launching game. There it goes. Okay, awesome. That took longer than expected. Now I get to sit at this lovely screen right here where it says Forza Horizon 5, and nothing's gonna happen. It just disappears and nothing loads. Like, I don't even get an error message or anything. Like, I literally don't have any programs running in the background. This is a clean install. It's only Windows updates. The latest NVIDIA Studio driver, when running that driver on Windows 11, it did give me this warning message, but I could just ignore it and it would still work, but I don't even get that message on this install. So I can't benchmark Forza Horizon 5 for these tests, which sucks because I was looking forward to that. The only games I'm going to be benchmarking, Forza Horizon 4, Forza Motorsport 7. I'm going to do 3D Mark for the GPU, and then I'm going to be doing Geekbench for the CPU. I'm going to be using a different hardware monitor program that a lot of you recommended, and I totally understand why. It is amazing. So I'm really glad that you guys have given me that. And then we will get like an audio reading or noise level of this computer at idle, completely managed by Windows, and then the noise level while I'm running all of those benchmarks. So each benchmark will have its own noise level. So as you can see, nothing is happening. It doesn't usually take this long. It usually disappears by this point, so something has catastrophically gone wrong. My life is probably ending, and the world as I know it has come to a halt. So before I off myself, I'm just gonna shut this thing down, and then hopefully we can get these benchmarks done, because it's November 11th, and the case arrived on November 2nd, but I've been too busy to run these benchmarks, and I don't want to build it in the new case before doing the benchmarks. So I gotta get these done so I could put the things in the new case and then actually use it. Day 3, trying to get these benchmarks done before stuff comes out. It is November 12th now, so let's start the screen recording. Let's get an audio reading, 45-degree angle, so that way it's where I'm sitting and also far enough away from the back of the computer that, you know, sound is going to happen. So we're going to take a look at the idle temperatures. We got 35 degrees on the CPU. We're kind of sitting in the mid 40s average on the motherboard. Again, kind of mid 40s for the memory, depending on the location where they are. Obviously, this one right here is the one directly in front of the fan. So that one is getting hit by air first. And it's actually kind of interesting. You can see that the temperature is colder on this one because it's next to the colder module. This one's hotter because it's between two hot modules, and then this one cools off more because there's nothing beside it. So you can visually see the heat dissipation difference between the modules depending on where they are. So that'll be interesting to check out once we're in the other case. Now for the NVMEs, because these are under a heat spreader attached to the motherboard, these temperatures are also going to matter. So we have drive temperature sitting at 46 degrees, 44, and 44. So I'm going to assume that these two right here are the drives that are connected to the larger spreader, and then this one here is probably the one that has the independent one. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but where it says Aorus down in the bottom there, that is a heat spreader that attaches to two of the NVMEs, whereas the one directly above the 16X PCI for the GPU, like right below the CPU here, that little piece, that's the heat spreader for one of the NVMEs, and then the two other ones are further down. So given that one of these is 2 degrees hotter, that's probably the one that has less material on it, keeping it cool. And now the GPU temperature, this is constantly fluctuating between 52.7 and 52.9, so we'll just call it 52.8. Those are all the readings. I'm going to get the noise level reading, so I'm just going to reset this and then let the graph run for the entire 30-second duration. Okay, so there we go. 33.4 was the average that we got after a 30-second duration, just averaging out the noise level that we were getting off the case. Now we can start with 3D Mark. So let's start that test, and I'll just speed this up to do its thing so you don't have to sit through the whole thing. And I'll leave this going so that way we can get an average reading, but I'm going to leave the room while that happens so I don't make any noise to skew this result. Oh, it just went up. It was 86.7 just before I turned the camera on, and it made that beep sound, which then made it go up. So anyway, that's the sound reading for 3D Mark. We got 8,810, which obviously is well below average because we're also screen recording at the same time. So right here, the maximum temperature that we hit was 77 degrees Celsius on the GPU, 77, 77, and 79 on the NVMEs. The memory sat right in the high 40s the entire time. Motherboard temperatures, 46, 51, 48, and 46. And lastly, the CPU, 69. Nice. Okay, I'm just resetting hardware info, and now I can run the CPU benchmark. So we got 38.1 decibel, just went up there because I was talking. Single core score of 1,294 and multi-core score of 8,516. On CPU, we hit 75. On the motherboard, we hit 45, 51, 49, and 47. Then down to the memory, 43, 49, 50, and 47. Then to the NVMEs, 50, 47, and 48. Lastly, we have the GPU, which was 54.5. So now we can run the gaming benchmarks, and I did get Forza Horizon 5 working. The issue was Windows Defender. You can't have Windows Defender running, so your antivirus will make the game crash. That's how bad this game is right now. So real-time protection is turned off, so now we can run Forza Horizon 5, so that's the only thing that's going to be different between any of the other benchmarks and Forza Horizon 5. So now we load this, and it will just work. And look at that, it's working. So just running through the options here, we have HDR off, we're running 1440p, 165 frames per second. We have full screen on, and motion blur is off. And for the graphic settings, we're running the Ultra preset with nothing else changed. So we can start the benchmark. 36.8 decibel average for that one. We achieved 55 frames per second while screen recording in 1440p. So that's actually pretty good. That was a lot higher than I thought it was going to be. So that's good. The GPU, we hit 68.3 degrees. The NVMEs, 48, 47, 49. Memory modules, 48, 51, 50, and 44. Then up to the motherboard temperatures, we have 47, 49, 52, 46. And lastly, the CPU, 69 degrees. Nice. We can turn Windows Defender back on, and we can run Forza Motorsport 7. We have it set to Ultra, native window resolution, so that way it'll be 1440p, 21 by 9. Otherwise, all of those other resolutions are 16 by 9. Dynamic optimization, default, because we're on Ultra, full screen, show frame rate, yeah, whatever. Okay, run benchmark. So we hit 37.7 decibel. For that one, average frame per second is 82.5. So now let's just look at the temperatures here. CPU temperature, 57 degrees. The motherboard, 46, 52, 49, 47. Down to the memory, 44, 50, 51, 48. On the NVMEs, 51, 49, 49. So the temperatures have been going up. So those heat spreaders are getting heat soaked. So we'll be able to see if that temperature comes down with the bigger front intake fans that'll be blowing air across them. And lastly, we have the GPU, which hit 63.3. And that's it. So we're done here. Now I get to play the fun game of taking this entire computer apart and rebuilding it into the new case. So for you, you won't have to wait. I'll just come back when it's completed. But if you want to watch the videos of me building it, there'll be one that's a commentary video explaining everything that's going on. And there's going to be another one that's just going to be like a glam video just showing, you know, eye candy shots and stuff to some music. Right now, not going to get into it. That completed computer is just going to magically appear. So I guess, like magic, poof. The cable management in this absolutely sucks. Now the airflow is amazing. I can feel a breeze coming off of this. Like, this is insane. We're ready to go. So let's get the decibel reader out here. Pause that for now. start the screen recording, so that way everything is exactly the same as it was before, because I was screen recording when I was doing the audio test. We're about a foot away from this 45-degree angle from the back and the side. I'm already expecting this to be louder, so I'm just gonna start this. I'm just gonna let it, you know, go for a couple seconds. We'll just see what the average is. Okay, so the average is about 33.7. So we'll start the screen recording. So we got 32, 28, 30. So I'm just gonna call that 30 on the CPU. So on the motherboard, we have 30, 34, 32, 31. So now we're gonna go down to the memory, which is the biggest one that I was interested in. And again, we can see the direct correlation to the position of the memory and the temperatures itself. So we actually have 27 degrees Celsius on that first memory module. Then we have 31, 33, and 31, which follows in line exactly the way it was before. Now we had much hotter temperatures yesterday, and even though that this is just at idle right now, that's a pretty substantial decrease in temperature. Now the NVMEs, we have 33 on the first one. This was the one that was normally running hotter. We have 33 on the second one, so identical temperature, but then the bottom one here, we have 31. So again, there's actually an improvement on the motherboard temperature with those bottom fans blowing straight up. For idle temperatures, we've already seen an improvement. Was it worth $350? We'll find out when we actually start stress testing this. So the GPU, just sitting, you know, having a good time, just doing its thing, relaxing, 48.2 degrees Celsius. So now, let's run 3D Mark. So the average we got was 35.6 decibel. And the 3D Mark score, we got 8,949. Now for the temperatures, the GPU, 68.5 degrees Celsius. The lower NVMe was 33, the middle one was 36, and the upper one, which has its own smaller heat spreader, was 38. So these two right here, the 2 degrees Celsius difference, that was exactly in correlation to what we were seeing before with the other one. But this lower one has a 3-degree difference because of those lower fans blowing directly on it. Then for the memory, we got 32, 36, 37, 36. And for the motherboard temperatures, we got 33, 40, 37, and 36. And finally up here on the CPU, we hit 58 degrees Celsius. Okay, so just reset all those. So now we can run the CPU benchmark. Okay, it just changed because I turned the camera on, but it was 35.3 as the average decibel reading. Now the single core score is 1,295, multi-core is 8,127. Now for the thermals, we have 63 on the CPU. On the motherboard, we have 33, 39, 37, and 37. For the memory, we have 31, 36, 37, and 36. And for the NVMEs, we have 39, 38, and 34. And then down the GPU, we have 49.3 degrees Celsius. So now, Forza Horizon 5. It still blows my mind that Windows Defender is the only reason that Forza Horizon 5 won't load. Like, what even is that? We are on 1440p, set to 165 frames per second, full screen is on, and motion blur is off. Now for graphics, everything is automatically set with the Ultra preset, and we're just gonna start the benchmark. So we got 35.8 decibel on that one, 60 frames per second. And now for the temperature reading on that one, we got 59.4 on the GPU, 36 on one of the NVMEs, 38 on the middle one, and 40 on the top one. The memory was 34, 38, 40, and 38. Motherboard temperatures at 34, 41, 39, and 38. And the CPU was at 58 degrees Celsius. Okay, so Windows Defender is back on. Now we can run Forza Motorsport 7. So just like before, we have the preset on Ultra, native window resolution, so that way it's set to 1440p, 21:9. Dynamic optimization is on the default, full screen, show frame rate, yeah, sure, everything's fine. Run benchmark. We got 34.2 decibel for that one, and an average of 82.4 frames per second. So we're done with these benchmarks. So everything's done, we got all the reading. But we can see here that the CPU temperature was 58 degrees Celsius, motherboard was 34, 41, 39, and 38. The memory was 33, 38, 39, and 38. The NVMEs were at 41, 39, and 37. And finally the GPU at 55.8. I'm gonna have to look over all the footage, get all the numbers, and just kind of see what reading I can pull together. But I already know for a fact that right now, there is no possible way to secure an all-in-one cooler to the front of this case if you have the 180mm fans on the front. You have to swap them and use those included brackets. That's the only way. So that is in fact how I'm gonna have to run this. But that's also depending if I even keep this case, because like shady advertising, discreetly changing things behind the scene because they clearly realized that there was a miscommunication in their advertising, and then instead of making right on it, they just kind of pretended like it didn't happen. And so far, these 180mm fans serve absolutely no purpose other than being proprietary and extremely expensive. So if I can figure out how to cable manage this better, because the 24 pin is driving me nuts, it looks terrible, and there's no way for me to actually like bend those cables around smoothly, because the difference between the motherboard and the actual case itself is so narrow, and that gap is so small that I can't get a curve in the 24 pin cables to go through smoothly without pulling that rubber grommet off every time. And then when I'm trying to fix the grommet, the cables get all messed up. So like, that sucks. And then the CPU power at the top, I'm gonna have to like pull those out and make like a 90 with those, and then somehow figure out how to have extra joints in my fingers so I can get between the power supply thing at the top here and that to actually plug those in. Like I might actually have to take the motherboard out so I have room to plug those in and route the cables through as I'm putting the motherboard in. That might be the only way to actually plug those in without buying new cable mod cables, because the factory ones from Corsair are just way too thick to fit this case. Then for the GPU bracket, obviously I would have more room in the front between those with the Fractal Design one, which they sell for $100 Canadian, so I'd have to buy that as well, plus the extra fans. So realistically, like, this thing is really dark, and that's kind of like the downside for me. Like, it looks pretty cool, but in a dark room, can you even really see what's going on? Like, you can't see any of the detail in the front of the case at all. You can't see anything along the bottom, and even looking straight in, you can only see like the front of the motherboard because the all-in-one cooler is sitting there. So without the RGB fans, it looks really basic. Was it worth $350? I don't think so. And I really, really want to return this, but I gotta go through the numbers and actually see if it's worthwhile. Did I just spend $350 for no reason? Yeah, I'm gonna look through the numbers. I'll give you my conclusion in a minute, which who knows, could be days on my schedule. Okay, so this is actually insane. I was very skeptical at first. I didn't think that $350 for the stupid case was actually going to be justified. Taking my bias completely out of the situation, I'm definitely going to be keeping this case now. Because after calculating all of the averages and everything and comparing all of the results, every single thing was better except for Forza Motorsport 7, which was within a 1/10 difference. Forza Motorsport 7 was the only one that was identical. Every single thing was better. So we'll run through the temperatures first. So on the NZXT H510 Elite, the average CPU temperature was 61 degrees Celsius, motherboard was 47, the memory was 47, the NVMEs were 48, the GPU was 63.3, and the sound level was 36.5 decibel. So now in the Fractal Torrent, the CPU was at 53 degrees Celsius. The motherboard was at 36. The memory was at 35. The NVMEs were at 36. The GPU was at 56. Now this is the part that's kind of blowing my mind, is that the sound level was at 35 decibel. So every single temperature was significantly lower, and it's 1.5 decibel lower. So everything is cooler, everything is quieter, and when we actually look at the scores, 3D Mark was 8,810. Geekbench 5, the single core was 1,294. The multi-core was 8,516. For Forza Horizon 5, it was 55 frames per second. Forza Motorsport 7 was 82.5 frames per second. Now if we look at the results for the Fractal Torrent, 3D Mark was 8,949. Geekbench 5 for single core was 1,295. Multicore was 8,527. Forza Horizon 5 got 60 frames per second, and Forza Motorsports got 82.4. So that's the only one that's within margin of error because it's 1/10 of a frame, which basically means it's identical. But even with the score being so close, it was cooler GPU temperatures and a quieter running system. Just for reference on how quiet this is, I'm currently mining Ethereum and the GPU is running full tilt with all 3 fans going. And that's like the most impressive part is we're sitting at 34 decibel. That GPU is running as fast as it can, and we're at 34 decibel. Like, I can audibly hear it, but the idle temperature was only 33.7, which with the old case, the idle sound level was 33.4. The idle decibel reading on this case is louder. Now, I did notice that. However, I think that's probably due to a bias because I'm still very salty about the advertising for this case, and I was really hoping that these results were not going to be as substantial as they are, so I would have a reason to return this case and buy something else from a more trustworthy company. But you can't argue with results. It's better in every single way. The only thing is the idle sound level. But again, that is completely factory. So when I put a fan curve on this, it's going to be significantly quieter, which I could have done with the other case, which makes that reading at the idle sound level completely useless for me. That's just for testing because I'm going to have this significantly quieter than the stock configuration. The only thing that I can think of where this case has its downfalls is the cable managing, because it's incredibly hard to cable manage in this case because they advertise it as EATX. But with an EATX motherboard, it's not that easy. So there's really no benefit in cable managing. It's exactly the same as it was with the old case. So even though there's more space, it's still hard to get everything through to make it look really clean, which right now it doesn't because I just kind of gave up and I was getting pissed. So I'm still going to do more testing, move fans around and everything to see if those 180s are worth it or if these 140s can actually suffice. So the next video will be running the benchmarks again with only 180s in the front and nothing else, compared to running with the 3 140s in the front and nothing else. Which the CPU temperature will have direct reflection on that because I'm going to be removing these 2 pull fans just so it doesn't skew the results. So it's going to be a direct competition between 2 180s versus 3 140s to see which ones are quieter and which ones perform better. That's where I'm at. I have more stuff to do. This case performed really well. I don't trust Fractal. I don't think they're a very reputable company based on their listing. The shady, misworded advertising, the pictures of products that are clearly not included with the product that they're selling, yet they advertise it for some reason anyway, and then quietly changing the listing without actually saying anything or trying to make right with any of the consumers that had issues. But you really can't argue with results. This case performs extremely well. Was it worth $350 Canadian? If I got the fans, yes. Without them, no, not even close. However, I just want to point out that if you're going to get this, only buy the RGB model because it is worth the extra $50 to have those fans. Even if you don't want them on, it still has a higher resale value because you could literally take all the fans out and sell them for basically $200 Canadian and then just replace them with the cheaper plastic ones if that's something that you really wanted to do. There's more potential in resale value with the RGB model compared to buying any of the other ones. Short story long, I don't trust Fractal Design. This case is actually amazing. If you're going to buy one, only buy the RGB model, and I have tons more testing that I have to do with this case. So if you found something useful, then like the video, subscribe, that helps out. If you want to help support my financial ruins of constantly buying stupid things like this for the entertainment of you, feel free to join the members program, or don't do any of it. I'm not telling you what to do.